And we're going to go to other topics. We're going to be learning, for example, that Amraphel and Nimrod are both characters that are described in the Torah as the ones that introduced war into the world, which is why Chazal understand both of them to be the same person. The question is, what was the real name and what was the name that we gave to them because of their behavior? We're going to learn about the importance of recording and of remembering and of reviewing the exact language that is used in the Torah. We're speaking about the oral Torah, how being precise in language, and we're going to learn different types of precision in language, that all of them are extremely instrumental in helping one remember one's learning. We're going to learn about the importance of teaching Torah to others. We're going to learn about the Bnei Yehuda versus Bnei Galil, that the Bnei Yehuda were precise in the language, and therefore they retained the oral Torah a lot better than the Bnei Galil that were not precise in the language. The Gemara is going to go on to say that even though there is an inyan of being precise in language, but sometimes there is another concept, which can be even 180 degrees opposite of it, that it's important to speak enigmatically. Sometimes it's important to speak, it's not called imprecise, but in a hidden way, to speak in riddles. As we'll have various examples, we're going to have the sugya of Rabbi Yeshua ben Hanania, who we know was the great debater, right? We have this, he debated the Savi Da'atuna in B'chaydas Daf Chesamad Beis. But here, Rabbi Yeshua ben Hanania is going to say that Miyamai lo nitzchuni Adam, no one ever got the best of me, chutz me Isha and Tinaik and Tinoikis, and we're going to record these three events where someone else, there was a woman, there was a young girl and a young boy that did get the best of him. We're going to have the famous Derech Ktsara Varucha, Derech Arucha Uktsara, famous because these are the words that the Alter Rebbe uses to open up the Sefer Tanya. We're going to have a few stories of Beruria and a lot more. Now, really, the next two dafim, other than the Mishnah, is going to be a lot larger than ERUVIN. We're going to be learning a lot of Agadata. The next daf nun dalad, we're going to be learning about all of the various different qualities that one needs to acquire to be able to remember one's learning. But as we get into the Spedic, it's very important to have pictures. Whichever Gemara you're using, I know that someone gifted me, and I want to thank whoever that was, from Hahoid V'Hahadar. This is from the Mamleches of Oiz V'Hadar, a phenomenal picture book. I'm going to be using here online, showing pictures from the book. I know that it's very little, but really everyone should have their own pictures, which will make all of our learning over here from technically very challenging to technically very easy. Okay, so we're going to begin on Daf Nun Beis Amud Beis, right? We're starting with the new Mishnah, Keitzad Ma'abrim Esarim. Baruch Atah Adino Eloheinu Melech Haolam. Shachar Kol Neim V'Dvarim. Okay, so like we mentioned, we already know that when you're kind of shvisa in a city, when you are kind of shvisa in an enclosed area, what we're going to focus here on the city, Koidem called the whole city for you is Daled Amos. From outside the city, you count 2,000 Amos. So we have to do two steps. We have to define the city, we have to define the boundaries of the city, and then we have to learn how to halachically extend the 2,000 Amos. Each one of these steps have a lot of novelties to them, and we're always going to be leaning, as we will see, leniently. Okay, says the Mishnah, now in our Mishnah, just note that Ma'abrin is with an ayin, Isha Mi'uberes, a pregnant woman has an abdomen that bulges, which really will be the first din of the Mishnah, that if the city is not built perfectly aligned, but if there is a house, a tower, a bridge, something that is also made ledira, that is protruding beyond the regular line from any of the sides of the city, it will actually extend the city in that direction in its entire side. All this is a lenient akula, which will always ultimately allow you to walk even more. So says the Mishnah, bayis nichnas bayis yotzem. If there's a house that goes in, but there's a house that goes out, there's a house that protrudes, or pigum nichnas pigum yotzem, or let's say, if a city is surrounded by a wall, right, and in these walls they would have towers, and the towers are not all aligned. One is in, one is towards inner to the city, one is protruding out of the city. So again, here you can clearly see that you have a house that goes in and one house goes out, or you have in the towers, one tower goes in and one tower goes out. Says the Mishnah weiter, or there is what used to be a house, now it's a ruin. But there is the height of what used to be is at least 10 tvachim high, and this is protruding from one of the city's corners. And this is protruding from one of the city's corners. So the picture that we have over here in the Zoom, in other words, if you look at the lower part of the picture, the city ends, the city is narrower. It's only in the top over here, let's make for a yid, the top is Mizrach, is where the city gets wider. So when you start measuring the 2,000 amas, you don't put a measuring stick at the end of the house. You don't do that. First, you have to square off the city, which will actually add a lot of square footage to the city before you begin counting the 2,000 amas. Right, says the Mishnah Daf Nun Gimel Amud Aleph. Or if you have Gesharim, or if you have bridges. And my friends were speaking about bridges, which is important, that had in them some sort of butkale, some sort of home for the toll collector, as we'll see in a moment. Or unefashos is a tomb building. People, guards, customarily would actually be stationed in that building. What's important here is that the structure is made lidira. Sheyesh bohen beis dira, says the Mishnah. This is step number one. Before you begin counting the 2,000 amas, first define the edge of the city. Might see in Asamida Kenegdon, right? You extend like you had the picture before in the Zoom. You extend the tchum of the city, drawing a line here from the right. In other words, why am I going to the right? Because on the top of the picture, the house, the dwelling goes further out, right? Goes more to your right. So you draw a line downwards. Very good. Now that's step number one. Step number two, says the Mishnah, now that you measure out the 2,000 amas, what you will do is that you will measure from each one of the four directions 2,000 amas, and when you come to the end of the 2,000 amas, you have the widest diameter is 4,000 amas, excluding the city. Don't make a circle around it. Make a square. You make it like a tabla mirubas. What happens when you make it into the square? So the math will be that now if you're going to measure, not from the middle of a side to the end of the 2,000 amas, you're going to have 2,000 amas. But if you're going to measure from the corner of the city to the corner of the square, which you are making around the 2,000 amas beyond the city, you're going to have a much larger area. And if the city would have been perfectly square, not rectangular, you're going to gain 800 amas, all of which you are allowed to walk. Through making the 4,000 amas a side of the city, not into a circle, but making it into a square, now you added the corners. So first we extend the city in a lenient way, meaning that you include more part of the city, halachically all dalad amas, and then when you measure the 2,000 amas, you also do it in a way that you end up gaining a larger area into which you will be allowed to walk on Shabbos and on Yom Tov. Okay, so we're going to come all back to that, Chevra, not on Daf Nun Gimel, not on Daf Nun Dalet, but on Daf Nun Hey. And from now on, let's begin. Says the Gemara in Avon Shmuel. They had a debate, Pashat, how to read the Mishnah. Chad, one of them learned that the words in the Mishnah of Ketzad Ma'abrin is written the way we have it written with an ayin, like we teach Miloshin Isha Me'uberes. So if there is a bulge that's protruding, if there's only one house on the side that's going more out, then it extends that entire boundary of the city. Ma'abrin, not with an ayin, but with an aleph, Miloshin Aver. Just like in the body, there are certain limbs that protrude, so it has the same content, it has the same toichen But the question is, what word was the word used by Chazal? Man the Tanach abrin aver. That's the meaning of, just like limbs protrude, a home, a dwelling can protrude. Uman the Tanach abrin. The pshat of ma'abrim here is ki isha ubar. Now that we recorded the machlokes Rav and Shmuel regarding the correct the correct version of a word, let's go weiter. When it says ma'aras hamachpelah, also a machlokes regarding the meaning of this word. Rav and Shmuel argue. One of them say that ma'aras hamachpelah, right? We have beginning with chayesara, is chadamar shnei batim zelef nemizeh, was two rooms, one within the other. Chadamar bayis va'ali al gabo, a house and a second story on top of it. Two different meanings. Says the Gemara, Bishleim Lamando Amar Zel Gavzeh. That's why it's called Machpelah. Machpelah Meloshin Koifel. It's double. Shaykh to say it's double. Lamando Amar Shnei Batum Zeluf Namizu. But if it's two homes, two rooms, one right inside the other room, why is it called double? Why is it called double? It's a single cave with two rooms. Says the Gemara, Kaka. According to that Manda Amar, the word double doesn't refer to the structure, but it refers to those that are temporarily resting in that structure. Shekfula bazugais. And kfula, my friend, doesn't mean double. It means that there are many pairs that are buried, that are interred in this amazing cave. Now, as we learned, what's the eye of that? So actually, we're jumping from Pashas Chayesara, we're going to Pashas Vayishlach. There it says, Vayava Yaakov El Yitzchak Aviv, and the Torah tells you where Yitzchak was living then. Mamre Kiryas Ha'arba, so Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Kiryas Ha'arba Zugais. In other words, there were four couples that were interred there. And who are they? Adam and Chava, Avram and Sarah, Yitzchak and Rivka, and Yaakov and Leah. Another machlokes Rav and Shmuel. When it says in Pashas Lech Lecha, Vayihi b'yemei Amrafel, this is the first time the Torah records a war. Actually, it was then a world war. But Amrafel, being that the Torah records him as the leader, he was the group of the four that have won over the five kings. He was the one that introduced war into the world. Problem is that Nimrod is also introduced in the Torah as the one that began, the one that introduced the war into the world, which is why it's a given that Amrafel and Nimrod are the same. The question is, what was their real name? So by Rav and Shmuel, one of them say Chadam and Nimrod Shmuel. His real name was Nimrod. And why do we call him Amrafel? Because he was the one She'amar v'hipil la'Avram Avinu b'tech kivshano eish. He was the one that, because of his word, because of his command, right, the Midrash, Avram Avinu was thrown into the furnace. And that's the pshat Amrafel Amar. He said, and hipil, and Avram Avinu was thrown in. Chadam, and really his name was Amrafel, that he led the whole world, right, in a rebellion against whom? He says, Olav. But Olav is because we don't want to say what really happened. He led the whole world in a rebellion against himself, in a rebellion against God Almighty. And how did he make that rebellion? So Mamash, he explained to the whole world that the environment is about to collapse, as we learned in Rashi, that every couple of hundreds of years, the heavens fall down. So therefore, he made a big push to save the environment, and in the core of the environmental movement, and the beginning was a war against God, and he got all the world to join him. Next machlokes between Rav and Shmuel. Beginning of Parsha Shemais, Rav and Shmuel. Chadamar Chodesh Mamish, that he was taka new king, and Chadamar Sheneschatshu Gzeroisav, that it was the same king that reigned with Yosef HaTzadik, Eloma, that he became like a new person. His decrees were new. In the beginning, he welcomed our grandparents, and then tragically, it was mamish the opposite. And now the Gemara explains, Mando Amar Chodesh Mamish, because it says the word Chodesh. Mando Amar Sheneschatshu Gzeroisav. Where did he get that from? Me, the like siv, vayomois vayimloich. So if it doesn't say vayomois, it was the same one. But if it was the same one, it says explicitly, Asher lo yoda es Yosef. How did he not know Yosef? Answers the Gemara, Maya shel yadas Yosef, the Havadame command the Yada Leila Yosef Klal. His behavior was such where it seemed like he never knew him, but indeed he was the Melech under which Yosef was the Mishnah Lamelech. Okay, beginning now, Chaver, with the mnemonic. The simon here is Shmoina Esrei Shnei Masar Lomadnu B'David Vayavin. Let's begin. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Shmoina Asar Yom Gidalti Eitzel Rab Oishaya Beribi. The word Beribi means the Gadol Hadar, the Tzaddik Yesod Olam, the Rebbe of the generation, right? So Rabbi Yochanan says that I, for 18 days, I spent with the great Rabbi Oishaya. And what I learned from him was one thing regarding our Mishnah, which is that that he began Arapaedic not with an ayin, but with an aleph. Asks the Gemara Eini, that he had 12 students. And I spent 18 days with his 12 Talmidim. And the chachmas kol echad v'yechad. What do you mean he only learned one thing in our Mishnah, the ayin or an aleph? He learned the leiv, let's go al pi chasidus. He learned the bina, he learned the chachma. Answers the Gemara, it's not a stira. Leiv kol echad v'yechad, v'chachmas kol echad v'yechad gamar. He learned their chachma and bina. However, Gemara le gamar. But when it comes to learning an actual halacha, other than this one thing, he learned nothing from them. Perhaps, in other words, you have nigla the Torah and you have pnimiyas HaTorah, l'chura. So he learned with them a lot of pnimiyas HaTorah. When it comes to halacha, when it comes to nigla, this is the one thing that he learned. Iba yisema or minayu didu gamar. From the students, if we're going to say that leif kolechad and chachmas kolechad also means to a nigla part of Torah. In other words, not only did he absorb godliness, but he learned, right, the achar of the Torah, the chachma of the Torah. He learned a lot from the Talmidim, but from the Rebbe, loy gamar. We have this a lot by the Baal Shem Tov, that his teaching was so exalted that it was hard to learn something from him. Okay, he learned a lot from Rabbi Oishaya Beribi. He was saying regarding our Mishnah, that if from our Mishnah he learned one thing, but when it comes to the rest of the Gemara, to the rest of the Mishnayos, to the rest of Torah Shabbat Peh, to Torah Shabbat, he learned tremendous a lot. Says the Gemara, right? That people there, let's go back to Rabbi Yishai was the big Rebbe, and there was a Gilui Elikus, and that affects a tremendous amount of bittul, which as we'll be starting to learn the whole sugya of prerequisites to remember Torah. It's not about being intelligent, it's about bittul, because Torah is godliness, and the godliness automatically causes bittul. That's how you measure it. If you're learning amongst people that, God forbid, because of the learning they become arrogant, that means the opposite of godliness. It's a samamavis. But over there was such a bittul that hoyinu yoshrim arba'a. It manifested that in one amma, 4 students squeezed into one amma. Whoever had the schus to go to 770, that's what happened. It became packed. It mamish affects a bittul, but it had to do with the fact of the greatness of the Gilui Elikus that was happening there. Now that was 4 Talmidim in one amma, guys. It's extremely difficult. Let's say that's 770. Now, Omar Rabbi, that Kishoyinu loimdim Torah Eitzel Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua, there it was even more. By Rabbi Elazar ben a generation prior, 6 Talmidim sat in one amma. That's the Rebbe's house. That's already, they say it's benes. It's not shaykh physically for 6 people to be in one amma and to breathe and to live. But it was so packed. So packed, all of that is we have on the base of Midrash. In other words, with the greater Gilui Elikus, the less the Gashmi takes up space, and the more this is absorbed, the Pnimius in the Talmidim, there comes a point, like in the base of Midrash, that people packed in there. It was a whole different experience. You should know, coming back, Rabbi Oishaya Beribi B'Doiroi was just as great as Rav Meir B'Doiroi. Which means, Rav Meir B'Doiroi, as we just learned, Lo Yuchlu Chaveirov La'amoid Al Soif Datoi. right? We had this in ERUVIN DAF Yud Gimel. And again, this is all connected to Rav Meir was he was the Ma'or. We're going about Pnimius HaTorah, and because of the depth of the Pnimius HaTorah, the Chachma of a person was unable to grasp it. He had access to the part of Torah that's beyond understanding. It's amazing. And it's amazing that, let's go back to the first statement of Rabbi Yechlan, that what did he learn from him? That it's not an ayin, but it's an aleph. It's very interesting that the ayin and the aleph, we taka have by Rav Meir. Remember that? In other words, in the Sefer Torah of Rav Meir, kosnos oir, in the beginning, by Adam, that God made for Adam and Chava, a kosnos oir, we have it with an ayin. In the Sefer Torah of Rav Meir, it was written with an aleph. It's amazing that the Gemara is comparing Rabbi Shaya with Rav Meir, and Rabbi Shaya Beribi is introduced here also. It's not an ayin, but it's an aleph. And the difference is that Rav Meir is referring to Torah Shebechsav, and here we are learning about the Mishnah, we're learning about Torah Shebal Peh, but it goes the same. Omar Rabbi Yechanan, you should know that Liban shall Rishonim, that the hearts, whether it is Bina, right, was from the earlier great Tzadikim, was Kepischai Shel Ulam, was as wide as the opening of the antechamber. And this is ERUVIN DAF Beis, like Koira Mishum Pesach. Do you remember that? And that was the whole explanation of the Machlekes Chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda. I know the Mishnah was focusing in the beginning on the height, but it was the same thing. Is 20 amas a limit? Can it be higher? Can you put the Koira higher than 20 amas? So a Pesach of the Heichel was 20 amas high, 10 amas wide. That was the din of the 10 amas wide. The Pischai Shel Ulam had a double height, had a double width, 20 amas wide. The great tzaddikim of the later generations, their heart was as wide, half as wide. And va'anu imagine, you're going from 10 amas width to us, our entire width is like a needle that is used to sew, which is very, very narrow. Now, leiv l'chayda is bina. Bina is the koyach of grasping, of understanding. Says the Gemara, Rishonim refers to Rabbi Akiva. Achroinim refers to Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua that we just learned about here, about how they packed in when they learned. And Ikeda Amri, the Rishonim is Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua, and Achroinim refers to Rabbi Shai Beribi. And then when we say Dva'anu Kimloi Nekev Machat Sitkis, Amar Abaye Va'anan, and us already in the later generation is ki siksa begud al gemara. We're not even opened at least like a needle, like the head of the needle where you put on the thread. But for us, it's so difficult to understand. As difficult as mashal is when you take a peg and you want to stick the peg into the wall, that the peg doesn't fully go in. You squeeze it in a little bit. That's how difficult it is for us to absorb. We're not open. And again, the opening has to do with having space. Space has to do with bittul. Amarava, even worse, that we are kiatzbata bikira lisavara. We are like taking your finger and pushing it into a lump of wax. Amela by the peg. I know the peg doesn't go fully in, but it goes partially in. If you have a very hard wax, then you're trying to stick your finger in, none of it goes in. In other words, the capacity of receiving the Torah has to do with the capacity of Kedusha, has to do with the capacity of Bittul, and not the capacity of the IQ that a person has. Amar Ravashi, this is the end of the times of the Gemara, that Anan for us, that if you want to, not only is it so difficult for it to go in, now we're going to speak about retention. Do we remember it? So Ravashi says that whatever it is that already went into our minds and our hearts, but it's as easy to forget as it is to stick a little finger in a very big pit. There's nothing stopping the finger from going in there. You have a huge opening, you stick your finger in and out easily. The Torah goes out, it's hard to go in, and sadly, it's so easy for it to go out. Okay, and now we're going to learn about different techniques that will help us better grasp, better understand, and better retain our learning. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. And it's amazing that we began with Liban. Liban is Bina. So we're going to be speaking about words. how important it is to be medayik in our words on so many different levels, to speak clearly, to repeat the words that we were taught in. Like we see here in our Mishnah, they wanted to remember with an aleph or with an ayin, not to say, I got the concept. Getting the concept is a school of to forgetting the concept. If you hold on to the words, then you'll remember the concept that the words hold. Bnei Yehuda, the Yidden that lived in Yehuda, since shehikpidu al shainam, they were particular in the way they spoke, and there's many levels to that. That's why niskaima teiras and biyadon. This is referring to what Ravashi was speaking here about retaining, about remembering. However, the Yidden that lived in Golul, since shehikpidu al shainam, they were not particular in the way they spoke. It has many meanings. This being particular, as the Gemara will unpackage it, like niskaima teiras and biyadon. The Gemara, hold on, mida dikpeda tali milsa. Is it about being particular in the way you speak? So the Gemara explains what it means. Ella b'nei Yehuda dedaika lishna. They were precise. They were precise means that whenever they were taught something, they reviewed the lashon harav, and everyone used the same words. Like now, when you learn Mishnayos Baal Peh, we're very careful to learn the exact, precise lashon, right? By almost all of the Rabbeim, you needed to, when they ever said a maimer, you needed to write down the exact lashon. That will help everyone retain it. Why? Next step, since they made an effort to be medayik and to repeat the exact lashon of the Rav. So there's going to be another technique which is called making mnemonics, making simanim. You can only make simanim if you are beginning with something that's precise. So you remember that when you say this word, then it's going to be linked to the next topic, to the prior topic. If every time you change your wordings, it becomes that much more hard to make mnemonics. So since they were medayik v'lishna, like Rashi says, that's why they were able, they were able to properly lay down mnemonics. Mnemonics, my friends, is not that much here to help you understand what you're learning, but it's here to help you remember the sequence. When we're learning yeshiva, when we learn any topic Baal Peh, if you understand, like Gemara is very easy to memorize. The difficult part is to remember who said what, the names of the Tanaim Amoraim, and it's even more difficult. You learn Gemara Baal Peh to remember what comes after what, and to remember what comes after what. That's why you have these simanim. But you have to attach it to something. But if the something itself is not that precise, you're going to lose the whole benefit of the simanim. And that's why niskaima teiras and biyadon. B'nei Golil, since the loidaiki lishna, they were not that precise, they understood it. Everyone repeated it in their own language, but since and even they themselves, every time they used another different words. So therefore they had a much harder time leaving mnemonics. So once they didn't have the right sequence, and I just want to add something that we find throughout the concept of doirish smuchen. Doirish smuchen is very important, meaning that the sequence will also help you understand the content. I know that we are learning right the surface of the surface of the surface, but every time we have Gemaras and we have the Gemara, what we say that once this Memra, since we quoted Rava, we're going to teach you 6 dinim of Rava. It's not only that, it's the content of one has to be connected to the other. So when you remember the sequence of certain dinim that are taught together, or in the Mishnayos, numbers, since we mentioned the Mishnah is going to go through many other things that are ba'asara. It's much more than that. The content is connected, and the content complements, one din complements the other. So the sequence is of tremendous importance, and if you remember the sequence, you'll even understand the toichen a lot better as well. Now, says the Gemara, B'nei Yehuda gomru chad michad rabo. Why did they have an easier time to be medayik v'lishna? Because they had one teacher. And again, that one teacher used the same lashon. So therefore, it is kaima teras and the other. B'nei Golul deloy gomru michad rabo. So you would think it's advantageous because every Rebbe understands it differently, he teaches it differently. No, at a certain age, you want to have the same. Now, don't forget that right now we have the Torah Baal Peh written down. Things are a little bit different. We have the Meduik Haloshin. We have the Gemara and the Mishnah written. They didn't have it then. So since they didn't learn from one teacher, So they already heard the same, like here, ma'abrin mit ayin mit an aleph. All this creates confusion. So loines kaimetet osan biyadam. Ravina Amar b'nei Yehuda the galu mesechtem. The galu mesechta. Rashi says that they made an effort to teach. It's another. It's more than a skula. That when you learn and then you teach, then you'll understand it and you'll remember it. This kaimetet osan biyadam. Golol, that they were not megala the mesechta, they did not reveal it, they did not teach it. And as the Gemara gives an example, David HaMelech, David the Gali Mesechta, Shol the Gala Mesechta, David the Gala Mesechta, Vashtet Bayem, Yirei Echa, those who revere you, Yira'un Nivi Yismachu. This is David HaMelech saying that those who have Yirah Shamayim, when they'll see me, they'll ask a Shaila and Halacha, and David HaMelech, right, was very accurate in his halachic decisions. He was actually, as the Rambam writes, in the chain of the 40 right heads of every generation from Moshe until Rav Ashi Ravina. Right, he was the head of the Beis Din. Why was he zoicha that he got the halacha correct? He was very precise. So we're saying over here because he was galei mesechta, because he taught shol the galei mesechta. So it says by him that uvechoil, that's the way we're going to read it. Uvechoil asher yifnech, ever returning the page. Yarshia, that wherever he would turn, we're speaking here about giving halachic rulings. Shaul HaMelech, right, got it wrong. His halachic decisions were wrong because he was not galei mesechta. We're going to learn galei mesechta. He didn't make an extra effort to teach that which he knows. Now that we mentioned Shaul, it's important not to have a wrong picture of Shaul. Shaul was our first king. That we're speaking about Shaul, and Ashi says Oisa Avain is that he had the whole city of Noiv, Irar Kehanim, killed out. That's why the Mishkan went from Noiv and went to Gibeon in a very small amount of time. And God forgave them for him. God was Michael Shaul, because it says that after he brought up the spirit of Shmuel, and Shmuel tells Shaul that you will fail in the war that you are waging. And now literally it means he was telling Shaul HaMelech that you're going to lose the war. But he says, tomorrow you and your sons are with me. Shmuel Hanavi. Shmuel was like Moshe and Aaron. Shmuel was in the highest place in Gan Eden. That you, Shaul, will be together with me. In other words, that whatever failing Shaul had on his level was something that Hashem completely forgave him for. Okay. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Abba. This is a hemshech to the Bnei Yehuda, right, that they were medayik malishna. That now that we established that they were the ones that are medayik malishna, yeah, we heard from Rabbi Yechon, from Rabbi Oishaya Beribi, that he learned the Mishnah's written Ketzad Ma'abrin with an aleph. But why don't we ask them? They're medayik malishna. If we're going to ask them whether ma'abrin with an aleph tanan or ma'abrin with an ayin tanan, right, what will they say? Let's hear from them. Similarly, an aleph and an ayin question we have in the beginning of Masechtas B'chayos. Now, in Masechta B'chayos, if an animal only has one testicle, one beitza, that animal is unfit for kachim. However, if an animal has two pouches, but only one testicle is visible, maybe there's another one that's stuck in the body. So the Mishnah says that you need to sit the animal on its akuzai, which means on its hind quarters. You position the animal in a certain way that if there is the second testicle, it's going to come out. And there the question was, how do you, the akuzai, the ayin or an aleph, how's it written? Akuzai tanan with an aleph, or akuzai tanan with an ayin. So l'chayra, since the Bnei Yehuda are medayik b'lishna, they will know. So let's ask them, yodei. So says the Gemara, it didn't work. Because she'elinu, we asked them, and v'amri lein, they told us that from when we are learning, we already had both versions. Ikeda atani ma'abrin, ve'ikeda atani ma'abrin. Ikeda atani akuzai, ve'ikeda atani akuzai. It's like the joke with the shul. Do you stand for the Shema? Do you sit for the Shema? You do what the tradition is. The tradition was always to fight about it. In a good way. In other words, and already in the Zman Bnei Yehuda, they did not have clarity, but they repeated both versions. They said they know there's either an aleph, like you have so many times in the Gemara, that you quote You quote all of the different versions to be medayik as much as you could. But coming back, Rabbi Shaya Beribi, he was the one that taught Rabbi Yechanan that it's written mit aleph, like Rav Meir with the aleph. Says the Gemara, Bnei Yehuda daik lishna mahi. Now we're gonna give various applications of being medayik v'lishna. Hu bar Yehuda da amar lahu. There was someone who lived in that region that made a declaration, talis yeshli limkoir, and amrulei. And when they asked him, my gavon talischo, what color is it? And we're not speaking about learning Torah, but it's connected. When people are so medayik, when they learn the Torah, then they become habituated of using a more precise expression, which is of great benefit. So Amar Luhu, so he responded. Now the cloak was green. The word yaroik means green, right? Like we have over here, the leaf from Yaakov over here, the leaflet. But the word yaroik also means yellow. So they never wanted to use that word because it's a word that leads to confusion. So what did he respond? He says, Kitrodin alei adama. It's similar to the leaf of the beet that protrudes, right? The beet is an in-ground vegetable. It's like the leaf that lays on the ground. He used a lashon, which was more elaborate, but it was precise that it's green, and he didn't want to use a word that's yellow. That's the consequence of people being medayik v'lishna. B'nei golol deloy dayik l'nishna ma'hi. So the Tanya, the Hu bar Galila. There was a yid that lived in the Galilee region. He was walking and he was saying, Amar laman, Amar, who has an Amar? Now, Amar can mean so many different things. First of all, an Aleph and a Ches, these two sounds, Ad Hayom Hazeh, by many groups of people, right? They can't say a Ches, so they say instead of a Ches, they say a Ah. So maybe a Hamar, maybe he, what did he mean? Amrulay, so they asked him, or they told him, you Galila Shoita. Guys, don't get scared. The Shoita here means people that are not smart enough to use precise words. So that's called a Shoita here in the Gemara. Do you mean Amar is Hamar? Do you mean you're looking to buy a donkey, lemirkav, to ride upon? Do you mean Hamar can mean wine? Or Hamar lemishtei? Do you mean Amar? Maybe it's not a Ches, but Aleph and Ayin, like Vayas Ashkenazim, we don't know if it's an Aleph or if it's an Ayin. Amar le'milbash, is it you're looking for a wool, do you want to make a garment? Or Imar? Imar means, and Imar is le'is kisa'ar, Rashi says, are you looking for a sheep that you want to shecht? So once you're not precise, people have no understanding, people don't chap exactly what you're talking about. Says the Gemara Vayter, Hayitza, there was a woman, the boy that she wanted to tell her friend that To'i the oichlech chelba. Come here, I want to give you some fat to eat. Amrolei, but what she said was, this is a consequence of being brought up in a society where people don't speak precisely. First of all, it's nice. She began by saying, my chaverte. Chaverte is sheloivti. Sheloivti would have been my friend, but she didn't speak clearly. So there's another application of not being medayik b'lishna. Pasha not speaking clear. Instead of saying shaloifti, she said shaloifti. Shaloifti means nothing. So she opened up her sentence with a nonsensical word, right? Like a latrin. Yeah, that's it. You've lost everyone. They don't know what you're talking about. You have to speak clearly. Exactly. That's my whole point, Danny. It's latrin. If not, so that's the shaloifti. And she says, Rashi Taichus Gavaldik. She says that Toichlich love you. May a lion eat you. Now, she wanted to say, I want to give you fat. How I want to give you fat. How did that grow to be, may a lion eat you? Right, so look inside the Rashi. Boy, come here, and I'm going to give you fat. But the Eina mispareshes lachtech tevuzumizu. Part of the imprecision is that she did not separate one word from the other. She connected words to the other, and she did not allow ulashmiya kol teva v'teva. And she erroneously, as did her culture, she brought two words together. Okay, and what were the two words together? She said that to'i, right? To'i is one word. Come, I will give you to eat. but she put those two words together. So it became toichlich, right? Toi oichlich. Now, when she put those two words together, it changed the meaning. Instead of I'm going to give you something to eat, it means you're the meal. And then, if you look at the last letter in the word oichlich, is a langa chaf, but it's a sound of a ches. The first letter of the next word is chelev, right? Chelba. So she put together the chaf and the ches. The ches of the chelev went to the prior word. So what comes after the ches? Just the words lavia, a lion. So loy medayik belishna, the one is connected to the other. In other words, not only were they not careful in articulating what they mean by picking the correct word, or like we had before, say many words if you need to make clear what you're talking about, the color green, don't use the word yaraik, but they were mashadach, they did not separate one word from the other. Okay, weiter, another example says the Gemara, a woman came in front of a judge and she wanted to complain that they stole from her a large tablet. What did she actually tell the judge? Mari, Kiri, my master. Now Rashi says Kiri with a kof means taka master. Kiri with a kof means my slave. So she used the lashon that can be understood both ways. Now she meant my master, but the judge could have understood that she is beginning the conversation by calling the judge my slave. And she says that tafla, obviously, I had a beam, and like Rashi says, what she really wanted to say was tavla mit a vase, and she interchanged the vase sound with a fe sound. They're very similar, but they're not medayik belishna. So first of all, she is speaking about the wrong item, and she says the ganvuch min, they stole you from me. Again, this is from speaking imprecise. Not they stole the tablet from me. She says, my slave, you beam, I do klutz, that they stole you from me. Ubedu havas, right? And now it was the chad shadru lach ilavi. She wanted to describe how big her tablet was. So she used this is another lemedayik belishna. She used a horrible example. She says, you know how large it was? That if they were to hang you on it, right? If they were to hang you on it, your feet would have been dangling, it would have been touching the ground. It was taller than you. So we have her three things over here. She used words that have dual meanings. Don't do that. Don't do that. She did not clearly articulate the letters of each word. She went from a vase to a fey. And what medayik belishna means, she gave a horrible example. All right, I know that she made the point that it was very big, it's taller than you, but you don't tell a person that a beam is so big that if they would have hung you from the beam, yeah, your feet would have been dangling from the ground. Okay, says the Gemara right. Oh, so lo'at kan, the importance of being medayik belishna. I understand the flow of the Gemara. Medayik belishna and speaking clearly and saying the word as it is, not to leave any type of doubt, doesn't mean that there isn't a time and a place to speak in riddles or to speak enigmatically, to speak b'lashon chachma. There is a time, and when there's a reason to precisely and wisely speak mit a riddle. And now we're going to have riddle speech, which Lamal Yuso says the Gemara Amsa the Rebbe, one of the workers that worked in the house of Rebbe, Kihavos Mishtayon B'Lashon Chachma, when she understood that the correct thing is to speak enigmatically, to speak b'chachma, to speak in riddles. Amrachi, this is what she would say. This is like Rashi says that sometimes the Talmidim that were eating by the house of Rebbe, the time came for them to leave, but it's not nice for a maidservant to tell Talmidim, go, enough. The Fabrengen is over. She spoke with wisdom. She told them that Olas Nakfas Bakad, the ladle hits the barrel. We'll see what she meant by that. Is then Yidun Nishnaya Likim Nehain. So now the eagles should fly back to their nests. In other words, what did she mean to say? She meant to say is that when they would have wine during the meal, and the l'chaim ended, the barrel is empty. When the barrel is empty, the ladle that they used to take the wine out of the barrel is hitting the bottom. So when the ladle hits the barrel, That means when there's no wine left, is a simon, and Rebbe didn't bring out another barrel of wine. So she spoke to them nicely. She called them eagles, right? That the eagles should fly back to their nest. In other words, it's not nice to tell a Talmud, go away, go home, but she said it b'lashon chachma. And on the other hand, the chad havi boy is the lace. When she knew that the Rebbe wanted them to stay on, so Hava Amr Lahu, she would tell them that Ya'adai basar chaver tamino, a piece of her friend will be removed from her. What are they referring to? That the barrel, there was a new barrel that was going to be opened up. A stopper is going to be opened up. And therefore, the sikve, olas, bakad, be'ilfa, the oslas biyamo. And now the ladle will float like a ship that goes in the sea. In other words, these are speaking in riddles, but there's a reason for that it shouldn't come out that she is dictating to these tzurba midrabanan to come or to go, but she was meramis to them what exactly Rebbe is planning to do. If he's not planning to bring out more l'chaim, that means that was the siman then that the Fabrengen is over. If you're planning to open up more l'chaim, that was a siman that the Rebbe wanted them to continue sitting. Says the Gemara Vayter. These are all examples of speaking b'lashon chachma, to speak in riddles. Rabbi Yosi bar Asyon, he have a mishtoi b'lashon chachma. Amar, he would say, Asul li shoir b'mishpat. These words, mamish. Make for me a shoir. Make for me an ox in judgment. Betur miskan on a poor mountain. What's meintos? It's amazing. So says Rashi that he wanted for a certain food to be served for him, but he didn't want everyone to know what type of food he wants to eat. So he wanted to eat beets, teradin with mustard. So teradin, says Rashi, is a composite of toir. Toir is an ox, and then shoir b'mishpat yachap. Shoir b'mishpat is beets. Then you have the words tur misken, a poor mountain. So tur in b'lashon hakodesh is a har. Misken, poor, means dal. Hardal, we said that a hey or an aleph and a ches, they interchange. Hardal. So the way he was meramis, what type of food he wants, was by breaking down the word into two parts, giving each half of the word another name, and whoever heard understood that he's asking to eat teradin, beets in mustard. B'chlal, we have, remember Danny and Yuma DAF Pei Gimel about Mayim Achronim, how important it is sometimes for people not to know what you ate. I think the Gemara says Mayim Achronim killed a person, that someone owed money, and what happened was that the creditors went to his wife and they told his wife that your husband said to pay, he didn't want to pay, and as a siman, he told us to tell you that he sent us because you ate beans for lunch or you ate beans for a meal. How did they know that? Because he didn't watch Mayim Achronim, so some of the beans were stuck on his mustache or what have you. And she heard, how would they know that? They knew that because he didn't watch Mayim Achronim, and she paid the debt, and he went up and he killed his wife. If I'm not mistaken, that was the story. But always you find sometimes it's no one's business what you're eating for lunch. It's not good for people to know. So that's the way he hid it. The way that one of the pshatim here is if he wanted to ask of the well-being of his host's wife, and it's not the tzanua to speak out, how is Mrs. So-and-so doing? So in a more modest way, he would say, Gvar pum dein chai, is the man of the mouth alive? Is the man of the man alive? What's meisa, says Rashi, Gvar pum den chai. So it's amazing. So take the word Gvar Pum Dein is Ish Pizu. Ish Pizu Spizin. Ish Pizu, the same concept. You take a word, you break it into parts, and then each part you use another word for it. You dafka change the words. Mazu Toiva Yesh, which means how is she doing? How is your wife doing? It's not modest to ask how is your wife doing. So now you know that the right way to do it was Gvar Pum Dein Chai Mazu Toivyesh. You have to make sure that the one who listened to your question at least learned ERUVIN Daf Nun Gimel Amud Beis, or Staka Chacham in his own right or in her own right to understand exactly what you're talking about. Okay. Now the Gemara says that Rabbi Abo have a mishtoi b'lashon chacham. Whenever he would speak in riddles, Hachi Avi Omer. This is what he would say: that Asrigu lepechanim. make the coals like an esrog. Was made like an esrog, that as an esrog glows, make the coals hot. Arkio lezohavim, spread out the golden ones, not spread out the coals, right? That glow like gold. And va'asu li shnei magidei bala ota, and make for me two that indicate in the darkness. What are indicators in the darkness? Roosters. Roosters are the ones that they wake you up when it's still dark outside. Or in other words, he asked to bring coals and to bring two roosters. He wanted two roosters to make sure that he will wake up on time. So the snooze button was two roosters. Oh, he wanted to eat them. He told them, get me the coals, make sure that they're hot, spread them out, and vayasu li bohen shnei magide balota, and make with the coals two roosters. Here again, that for you see that he did not want for it to be public knowledge what he's eating for lunch. He hid what he ate. So therefore, he spoke to whoever made the food, B'lashon Chachma, that they understood what he wanted, they knew what he was going to be eating, and other people, they didn't learn this Gemara, had no idea exactly what he was referring to. Says the Gemara, Amru le Rabbanan la Rabbi Abo. Hatspidneinu, I want you to show us, Heichen Rabbi Eloi Tzafin. Right, where is he? He wasn't there. Rabbi Eloi was not in the yeshiva, he didn't come to learn, so Amar Lu Rabbi Abo answered, I'll explain to you why he's not here. Olatz benaro. Olatz means he rejoiced with a young woman. Who was this one young woman? She was Aharoinis. That means that she came in B'nai Mishpacha, she was a Kohenes. Aharoinis, she was the second wife. She was another wife that he married. The first wife passed away or divorced her. Eiranis, but she is a lively one. And therefore, Bihine Artu, she kept him awake all the night. And therefore he slept in. Amrullah Isha, right? What was he referring to? No, he didn't say clearly the Talmud slept in, he got married last night, and she was a Levitic wife, all of a sudden he was awake the whole night. He said it B'lashon Chachma, he said it B'lashon Sunua. Olatz benara acharoinis, Well, other people say that he was not referring to Rabbi Eloi is getting married a second time, but he was speaking about a Masechta, that he understood that Rabbi Eloi began to learn something new and he was so happy about it, right? He considered, he rejoiced with it. Maybe he was Masechta Yuma connected to Kaihanim, and it kept him up the whole night, and that's why he didn't come. Whichever one it was, he did not speak clearly. He spoke Dafka B'lashon Chachma. Amri Eloi, Rabbi Eloi, same thing in the opposite. He once asked Rabbi Eloi, Hatzpinenu Heichen Abba Boat Safim. So Amar Lohen, that nisyoitz b'machtir, that he took permission by the one who gives out the crowns. That refers to the ones who gave out smicha. That refers to the nasi. He got the shus from the machtir, and v'hingiv le'mipi boishes, and he went to the Negev to learn by the chachamim that were as wise as mipi boishes. There was a reason why he didn't want everyone to know that Rabbi Bo went to the yeshiva in the south. So again, he spoke in riddles to keep it more concealed. Okay, says the Gemara Vayter. Rabbi Shua ben Chananya. All about enigmatic speech. And like we mentioned, Rabbi Shua ben Chananya, amongst many other things, he was the greatest debater, right? He debated the Savid Atuna. No one ever won a debate against him. So he said about himself that miyamai lo nitzchani yadu. No one ever won a debate over me, aside of one time. There was a woman, an Isha, there was a Tinoik, there was a young boy, and a Tinoikis, and a young girl. And now we go. Isha Mahi says the Gemara Pamachas Nisorachti Eitzelach Sanya Achas. I was staying at a certain inn. Also, Sali Poilin, and she made for me beans. And the Yom Rishon, Achaltim V'Loishiyartim Behem Klum. I ate up the whole plate. I left nothing over. Shnia, the second day came about, I left no beans over. And as we will see in a moment, that the way you tipped the waiter was by leaving some food over. That was the tip for the waiter. Try this nowadays, see if it works. If you want to leave a bigger tip, leave some more food. And he never left a tip. Now she wanted to respectfully educate him that nishtazo, you got to leave a tip. So what happened? The Yom Shlishi, on the third day, hikdi chasan b'melach, she put so much salt in the beans that it became fabrent. He couldn't eat it. Now he was a very edel, a tzaddik. He was not going to tell her, "What did you do? You ruined my beans." So kiven shata'amti, when I tasted the beans on the third day, is moshachti alabiyam. I stopped eating it. So she said, "Here's the chayin. Why are you not eating? If it happened to you, you were invited and the food was really, really not good, but you want to be nice. What are you going to tell them? Your food is terrible? You can't say that." So Marty, I told her, "Here's the chayin. I already ate. I'm full." So she tells him, "I know it's not true." So Amr Ali, she responded to me that had you been full, then you wouldn't have eaten bread. The Iker Suda was bread. You ate bread like you're hungry. I know that you're not full. So first of all, she caught me. She knew that I was not telling her the truth. I did it not to insult her. But then she went on and she said the following. Since I didn't get the hint, she needed to speak it out clearly. So Amr Ali, she tells me, Rabbi, maybe you didn't leave over a little portion, and leaving over a portion is important. Why is it important? Because that was all you left for the waiter. And that a waiter cannot take the tip for himself by deciding that when he's going to serve the food, he's going to leave a little bit in the bottom of the pot. That would be one way for the waiter to get something. A waiter should not do that. The waiter should serve all the food. And then everyone has leftovers, and that becomes the food of the waiter. And if you learn Masechta Brachas, and everyone should learn Masechta Brachas, he'll get the leftovers and he'll get oil smeared on his head. It's good to be a waiter. So hastu. That the people who eat shall leave leftovers. So in other words, you did not leave leftovers. I was trying to hint to you, but you didn't get it. Now I have to speak it out explicitly. And he felt that she bested him, and he shared that experience. Now it's interesting just to point out the Seder. He said, Isha, Tinoik v'Tinoikis. For some reason, when we are elaborating, we are first Isha, that was the Seder, but now we are reverting the order. Tinoikis mahim, pamachas isimah baderech. I was once traveling. And there was a path going through a field. And so in other words, who gave you permission to walk through private property? So I told this young girl, look at the path. It was well trodden. It was, you can look, you can see that everyone is using it. So everyone is using it. It must be a public domain. So she responded that just because everyone else is doing something doesn't mean that it's kosher. So Amr Ali, listen, yeah, many people use it. They're all banditin. They have no respect for private property. So just because others, it doesn't mean that it was done b'reshus haba'alim, and he accepted that, and she was right. She was right. Just because everyone else is doing it doesn't mean that it's right. And the final story, Tinoik Mai, Pamacha, so Yisima Halach Baderech. The Alter Rebbe opens up his Sefer Tanya with this. And I saw a child, a young boy, that Yoshev al Parashas Derachim, that he was sitting at a fork in the road. And V'amarti loi be'ezo derech neilach le'ir. Zu answers the boy, Amar li, Zu, this path to the right, to the left is Ketsara. It's very short, but it's long, short, long. V'zu arucha Ketsara. Now we have throughout Chazal, we have this concept of Tfos Lashon Rishon, Tfos Lashon Achroin, it's a Machlokes Tanoim, right? Sometimes you can say, the first statement, he made the Ktsara, but then he realized that it's wrong, so he corrected himself. Or sometimes you say the opposite logic. Here he meant both. He meant both were correct. So, and he went after the first. What happened? It was taka in kilometers, in feet, in yards, and miles. It was a lot shorter than the other path. He got to the city relatively quicker, but Kivishi got to leave. The moment I got there, I was unable to enter the city. But it was surrounded with a gun, with a garden, with a pardes. So chazarti la'choyrei. And amarti loy, and I told him the boy was still there. B'ni, haloy amarti li ktsara. Did you not tell me it's short? How is it short? It doesn't enter the city. So amarli, he responded, v'loy amarti locha arucha. And now we chap that coming back here, he was meduyak, he was medayik malishna. It was both. It was short, but at the end, you couldn't get into the city. So Nashaktiv al Roshai, I kissed him and I said, V'yomarti lo yashrechem Yisrael. I said to him, praising all the Jewish people, Shekulcham chachamim gedolim atem migdolchem va'ad ketanchem. And as the Alter Rebbe explains, that the avoid of being misboinen and through his boinenus creating feelings of avon yira, it's takadar charucha. You have to do a lot of his boinenus, but then that feeling, since you earned it, it's going to make your observance taka easier. If you're not going to do this boinenus, all you're going to do is you're going to arouse the ava misuteris, the yira misuteris. That's takadar kitzara. But arucha, because there'll be many more times where you're not going to have in contact with that feelings of ava and yira, and then the observance will become that much more challenging. Let's hop on another few lines. Rabbi Yossi Aglili Avakazal Be'urcha. Let's begin with one story with Beruria. Ashkachala Beruria. He finds Beruria, my friends, is the daughter of the great Rabbi Hanina ben Teradian. Right? Beruria is the wife of Rab Meir. Omar Allah, he asked her, listen to this. Which road goes to Lloyd? This is a hemshach of the story of Rabbi Shimon Hanania. So Omar Allah, she tells Rabbi Yossi Aglili, Glili Shoite. Don't say any words that are not necessary when you're having a conversation with a woman. You could have asked me the same question, not be'eza derech neilech laloid, be'eza derech 4 words. You could have said it in 2 words. You could have told me be'eza laloid. So therefore, she called him Agelila Shoita for him using words that were unnecessary. What a Gavaldic story. God willing, to be continued. This is amazing. It gets better.
Yontif, ik mag ze met Teva.
Oh man, don't go away. Tzemach now, blijf daar.
Hoe geht men?
Me geht gar nicht, me geht auf Aderach da. ERUVIN Nun Dalet.
Ayit is amahalig.
We're going to learn about the Hiluch now.
Oh, okay. I'm here.
All right. With the help of Hashem, we are learning ERUVIN DAF, Nun, Dalid. We are in middle. We learned a story of Beruria. We're going to continue learning another story of the daughter of Rabbi Hanina ben Teradian, of the wife of Rabbi Meir, the great Beruria. It's really going to be a DAF that's going to speak about the importance of learning Torah out loud. We're going to have many statements that we learn a lot about in Chassidus. Chatoy v'achol, chatoy v'ishtei. To understand that there was a time in the past where everything was beseder v'adraga, the way Chassidus says. First, you have to attain one level, then you go to a higher level. You don't jump. Jumping is not good. There are other times that jump, chaparain, and eat chaparain and sleep. The Rebbe said that in reference to our generation, the ikvus of the Mashiach, that many people are taking upon themselves certain chumras and hagim while they're still not yet fully developed in the basics. So it used to be first do the basics and then be machmer. No, anything and everything has tremendous value. We're going to learn about all of the traits that are essential to be matzliach in learning Torah or getting access to the kedusha of Torah. And one of them is the importance of teaching Torah, the importance of reviewing Torah. All of this has to do with one's bittul. In other words, teaching has to do with bittul. We're speaking about someone who feels like that teaching is beneath him. He's not going to benefit from it. So what? Chazering is reviewing. I already know it. It takes a lot of bittul to chazer. You're not acquiring something new, but it's another exercise of bittul. We're going to have the famous Tanach Rabbanan Ketzad Seder Mishnah, the Seder of how Moshe Rabbeinu taught the Torah. I know that in Pirkei Avos we have a very, very generic statement that Moshe Kibel Torah Sinai, Umasara Ali Yeshua. Then you have the Zakenim, the Nevi'im, and the Anshe Knesset Agdoila, as we'll speak of when we learn the DAF. But here there's a whole different Seder in more detail, how Moshe Rabbeinu taught the Torah to Adam, and then to Banav, and then to the Zakenim, and then to Kol Yisrael. In other words, that he taught the Torah 4 times, people heard it 4 times, and the whole concept beginning with everything should be learned 4 times. We're going to have the amazing story of Rabbi Pereda, who used to teach to a Talmud who needed to hear it many, many more times than 4. He had a student that only understood something if he heard it 400 times. And how Rav Pereda had the patience to teach it to him the 400 times. And there was a certain incident that distracted the Talmud. So after the 400-time repetition, he still didn't chop it. And in order for him to get it, Rav Pereda taught it to him another 400 times. Like Mamish Gavaldik, We're going to learn about something that we learned about in the previous DAF, that Ein Torah Niknas Ela B'Simanim. As we mentioned, mnemonics is important for you to remember the sequence, and remembering the sequence is of essential importance. We're Doishim Smuchim. We understand the echos of the limud from the sequence that it is placed in. We're going to learn about the importance of asay, ma'adim. You should make a fixed times, dikoiveya itim l'toira, and a lot more. We left off on the Afnun Gimel Amid base. We're all the way in bottom of the Amid, all right? We're on the last line. We're going to invite to learn about this great woman known as Bruria. Says the Gemara, Bruria ashkachte lahu talmida. She found a certain student to have a goddess Belachisha, that he was learning, but Belachisha, right? He was learning ana chayis. He was whispering the words. So what happened? What did she do? Batshabe, she kicked him. I think it means kapshutai, because when you kick a person, right, when they shout, they don't shout quietly. Oh, when it's negeya, you go, oh, you shout, you put your energy in it. And she tells him, loy kach kasuv, that arucha pasuk in Shmuel, bakoil ushemura, that only when it's arranged in all is it secured. Meaning, if the Torah is arranged and connected to all your amachivarim, then mishtameres, you're going to secure it. Both, you'll understand it better. We're speaking again not about the chachma of the Torah. That's, you can read it with your eyes. Lahavdol the goyim, they go to a library, they read it silently. Speaking about the emes of the Torah, the chachma of the Torah, that you have to have all your limbs involved. And the Marsha says that when a person speaks loud, he's mamish physically affecting all the limbs of his body. All of your body goes into it. But the imlav, if it's not arucha in all your ramach ivarim, watch not arucha. You're using your mind, you're using your mouth, you're learning slow. We're not speaking about silent, but you're not learning with a loud voice, then, God forbid, it won't be properly retained. Says the Gemara, we learned in the Midrash, Rabbi Eliezer. Here also, he learned, but he learned quietly. After 3 years, he forgot his learning. Can you imagine if we would remember our learning for the first 3 years? That would be amazing. But by him, he remembered it for 3 years. Afterwards, he forgot it. Now, don't forget that we have in Pirkei Avos, Peri Gimel, the whole concept that if a person could have remembered and they did something or they did not do something that was needed to remember it, and therefore, so to say, b'mezid, they forgot the learning, mischayiv b'nafshay. And now this is connected to our sugya. So Tana, we learned that Talmud Rabbi Eliezer. This is the same Talmud, according to many. Why? Because he forgot his learning. Why did he forget his learning? Not because he did something to forget it, but because he did not learn it loud. He did not do something that would have helped him retain it. And really, something not good should have happened. And now we're not learning about an abased and sreifa. We're speaking about the himmelish Zajac. We're speaking about his teacher, Rabbi Eliezer, that intervened for his Talmud up on high. He told the heavenly call, Hanicholai, loss him up, leave him alone. He's mischayev b'sreifa because of this lack, but on the other hand, he has another schos. And what was that schos? That Adam Gadol Shimesh and Adam Gadol Chayra, Adam Gadol Shimush Talmidei Chachamim is also a concept of bittul. So maybe l'chayra, since he actually was a person that was so subservient to the tzaddik that he did connect himself to the emes, to the light which is within the Torah. Says the Gemara Vaitin. Amalei, you had 8 lines from the top of the Amud, guys. Amalei, Shmuel, and Rav Yehuda. Shinana, sharp one with long teeth. Psach, pumech, kri. When you learn psukim and chumash, open up your mouth, learn loud. Psach, pumech, today. When you learn mishnayis, psach, pumech means mitchayis, loud. Kihecha, it doesn't only mean loud, it also means loud. Kihecha, teskayimech, only like this will you have the Torah remaining with you. And and then your life will be lengthened. As it says, that the words of the Torah are life. Now the pshat is to those who find the Torah. And it's going to heal. It's going to cure your entire flesh. So it's not just about finding the Torah. Put a chidik under the tzaddik or put a yud after the tzaddik. In other words, it gives life and it heals dafka to those who express the Torah with their mouths loudly. Amalei Shmuel Rav Yehuda, Shinanam, Gemaldik, you sharp one, Chatoy ve'echoil, Chatoy ve'ishtei, Chaparain, grab and eat and grab and drink, the Alma, the Azlin and Minei, because the world from which we all will depart from, Kihiluli Dami is like a chasana, like Rashi says, just like when there's a chuppah, when there's a chasana. Before you blink, the wedding is over, it goes very quick. And therefore, sometimes you say, eat slowly. First have the fish, and then have the soup, and then have the meat. Sometimes when you are at the end of a Seudah, no, don't eat al pi seder. Because if you're not going to chop right now, there'll be nothing left. Everything will be cleared off. And this is all inside, even though it's the same Shmuel to Rav Yehuda, but I understand this also to be connected as another Eitz of Teva of being able to retain the learning, that you got to learn a little bit of everything. Learn everything. It's amazing. The Bar Mitzvah Maimer, a Bar Mitzvah Bacher, it's the hardest Maimer. Right? Sometimes we teach our children that which is a couple of steps beyond what they can grasp. I know that Limud HaTorah has to do with a Chayil Seder, but the emes is no, it's more than that. And sometimes you learn something that's beyond you, you feel humbled, which is good. Again, everything, the keys to learning is ultimately going to be the bittul. The Rebbe says, I'll speak it out right now, that when it says in Pirkei Avos, Moshe Kibel Torah Sinai, and then there's Moshe and Yeshua, and then the other three, there's the Kenim and the Nevi'im and the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah. So beginning with Moshe is the concept of bittul. That's prerequisite number one. And Yeshua is his diligence. And Loyamish Matoicha oil. And Loyamish Matoicha oil doesn't mean that Dafka Yid, that's a Yoshev oil. A person that's a Zvulun. During the time that you kaveh itam latoira, you have to be completely ibig again. Says the Gemara. And as I mentioned many times, Rav Amnuna unofficially actually became the Mamala Makim of Rav and Surah. Okay. If the pshat, he's speaking about the financial means. If God blesses you with abundance, heitev l'cha. Heitev l'cha means don't always think about later. Enjoy it. Why? She'ein b'sha'ol tainuk. Because you're going to leave it for later. The concept of chaparain. Chaparain means live today. Obviously, we're speaking about beruchnius. Because what, tomorrow maybe you're going to be in the shoel. In the shoel, there's no enjoyment. The ein lamovis hismaneya. You're going to say, I'm not ready to go to the shoel. I'm young, I'm healthy. Yeah, death doesn't delay. When it's the time, it's the time. And if you're going to say, well, I'm not going to eat now, I want to leave it for my children. If I'm going to eat it now, I'm not leaving for my kids anything. So he gives two answers to that. Two reasons why that's the wrong way of thinking. Number one, he tells them, right? Who says that their children will retain the wealth? You're going to abstain, leaving it for them. Who says they're going to have it? You won't even know about it. That's the way Rashi says. Number two, what you think your children need you. Every person has their own parnas. That b'nei ha'adam are doimim le'izbei hasadim. And what happens is sometimes halolun leitzim. Some grass grow, and some of them are noivlim. Some of them die. So what? Don't all about chaping arayin. Not planning that much for the future, and all of this beruchnius, especially when it comes to limud Torah, that we're mechuyev to learn all the halakim of Torah, and we should try to learn that which even now seems to be a little bit beyond. I'm not prepared enough for it. Jump into it and chap. Amar Rabbi Shlomo Levi. Hamahalach maderech. If a person is traveling. And was Pirkei Avos, we're speaking about someone who's traveling in a dangerous place. Ideally, they should go with someone else. Right? We learned about how another person will protect you from Hamazikin. Again, Masechta Brachas. If there are two people, if there are three people, but no one is with you. What should you do? Yasik Batleira. That's the greatest protector. As it says, Ki Livias Chein Heim, that they, meaning the words of the Torah, are a accompaniment of Chein. Was meant us that chein means that it's gonna protect you. Person who's bachein is protected. As it says, imagine if you have a sore throat, is as it says, that Torah should be like a necklace. We'll see soon the meaning of a necklace. For your throat. If you have a stomach ache, as it says, in that pasuk, that rifus tihi lisharecha, that it's going to be a refuah to your navel. If you have a pain in your bones, yasik batoiro. As it says, v'shikri la'atzmoisecha, that the Torah becomes marrow marech for your bones. As it says, so on that, when we're learning Nigla, Toshima, when you learn Primius HaTorah, it's always going to be either in the Zohar Tochazi or here in the Gemara itself. Not here, but see. If you give to your fellow a medicine, the rule is that a medicine for the same person is good for one thing, but that medicine has side effects, it's called in English. No medicine, if it's stronger in one area, it's detrimental in another area. You take it because overall, it's a lot better than worse. But there's always some side effect. To this illness, it's good, but to something else that wasn't so bad, it's going to irritate it. Sam chaim to the whole body, as it says over here, that it heals your entire body. Now we're going back, my friends, to the inyan of learning bekoil. It's sweet. When you retain it in your stomach, it's sweet when you retain your Torah. Set them on your lips. Taiches the Gemara, when are they sweet? When you retain them. And this goes back to what we learned in the previous DAF about the Bnei Yehuda, that the aim is Tishrim B'vitnecha. One of the ways that you retain the Torah is Bisman Sheyukoinu Yachtov Al Sefosecho. When they are set, when they are arranged, when they are reviewed, Medayik B'lishna Darabe, as we learned, you learn to speak clearly. You keep on repeating the same words. You are able to make simanim v'chule v'chule. Same concept from another pasuk. It says simcha lo'ish, that a man has joy b'man the piv, by the answer of his mouth. It depends what you're answering. But davar b'itay matoif, by something in its proper time. Oy, how good is it? So taiches emusai simcha lo'ish bisman shemana b'piv. Tell a person that learns. When you forget, it gives you pain. There's a certain joy when someone asks you something and you remember and you know what to answer. Okay. Lashon Acher, another version, that Emosai Simcha Leish B'Mayna Piv. When will you have joy? Because you'll know the answer, because you didn't forget it. That is, now we're emphasizing a new thing, that learn. In other words, when you learn Torah and you don't feel that it's negeya to you, it's harder to remember it. When you learn 30 days before Sukkah, you start learning Ilcha Sukkah. Before the Yad Davar B'Itoi, it's a whole, we know it's a different learning, because then you're already focusing. I'm learning this not just, which is gavaldik, to learn God's holy Torah, but I'm learning it halacha l'maisa. And therefore, you have more Yiras Shamayim. You are afraid, I better get this right. This is not just learning a nice Mishnah. I have to know, I have to remember. You learn differently, and you remember it differently. Rabbi Yitzchak weiter, coming back to the Sharblat of Tanya. Ki karev elecha hadavar ma'oid beficha ubelvavcha lasoisoi. So what's the Alter Rebbe's kasha? Mela lasoisoi, but belvavcha, right? That's a avodah of tzaddik. How's it karev ma'oid? So amos I karev elecha. The first thing is beficha. That's what we're learning. That when you learn Torah aloud, beficha, that influences the way it goes into your heart. And since it goes into your heart, and therefore you're going to retain it, we're learning about you, you're going to remember it, the heart, the lave, as we learned in the previous daf, then you'll be able to do it properly. It says in Tehillim, Tavas liboy nosatoloi, that the taiva of his heart you gave him. Ba'areshes fasov, and the utterance of his lips, bal monatosela, you never withheld, ever. Taiches rava, amos I tavas nosatoloi. In other words, when a Yid learns out loud, the taiva of our heart is that we should understand the kedusha of the Torah. And Chassidus says that shikha is only for people that only got the chitzonius of the Torah. Should have mentioned it in the last stuff. When a person is zoicha that he gets the oid of the Torah, you'll never forget it. You'll never forget it. You only forget Torah because we have the chitzonius of the Torah. And one of the ways of getting into the pnimius again is learning dafka out loud. And Rabbi Rami, he pointed out the following statement. It says Kavas libinasato loi, right? Kavas meaning that God grants you the desire while it's only still in your heart. That there's a koyach of a tzaddik that even before he articulates and asks, it's already granted. Then it says, Vaitin in the same pasuk, that only that which he articulates with his lips will not be withheld from him. So Taichas Rava, Zajac, Rashi says mazel. Mazel, Chassidus says, is the chai of the neshama. Again, l'chayr, it's connected. Notice when a yid is able to access that which is beyond neshama is the chachma. Mazel, chaya is already the koiches that are soivit. In other words, when you tap into the kedusha, that which is l'mayla ma'aseichel, then God will grant you wishes even before you articulate it. If you remember, we had a Masechta Shabbos, this whole concept that we have to do shvisa b'dibur, but a chassid, even a shoyves mimachshava. Because when you come to that level, a tzaddik is doing a little bit to the Creator, that God creates with his thoughts as well, especially on Shabbos. The world is created with speech during the week, but on Shabbos, God creates with his thoughts. So when a person taps into that level of godliness, so then that person's thoughts are like his speech. But Lo Zachac, Rashi says, if he doesn't have mazel, that means if he doesn't connect himself to the level of Torah that's known as chaya, as mazel, then he has to speak it out. Then Balmanata Selo. Now, what does Selo mean? One of those words. So Tana Devei Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. You should know that whenever the Torah says either the word Netzach or the word Selo or the word Va'ed, it means and is something that is beyond the Ishtalshalos, which means it's beyond time and space. Ubemel, it's something that never has an interruption. Einlei Hefsekei Lamas. Where do we see that? Netzach, it says, Loila Oilam Ariv, I will not forever fight. And Loila Netzach Exlight, I won't be angry forever. So the Lo Oilam and the Lo Netzach are smuchin. We're doing smuchin here. Selo, here it says mamash one or the other. Kasher Shamanu, Kenu Inu, Ir Hashem Tzavokais, Ve'iro Lekenu, Elikim, Yechoineneha, Ad Oilam Selo, here mamash Selo is next to Oilam, forever, and Voed, Hashem Yimloich, Li Oilam Voed. So that's the Balmonata Selo. That's also connected again, that there's a part of the Torah that is beyond time. And therefore, why do we forget? We forget because time went on. When you get it, you don't forget it. You got it. You're going to forget it later. If you connect yourself to a madrega that's lamayla mahazman, how can you forget? There's no time. Either you know it or you don't. And when you know it, you know it. Right. Simanim, the simon for the next sugya is anakim l'choyav luchais charos. Says the Gemara Amar Rabbi going to Girsa Amar Rabbi Lazar. This is not Moira. My dechsiv, as we quoted the pasuk about va'anakim, that Torah is like a necklace, like gargul for your throat. Says Rabbi Lazar, if a person makes himself like a necklace, what's like a necklace? Sharaf al savar, that he is a necklace is not tight around the neck, that your interaction with other people is loose, is pleasant. And how are you pleasant? Because you're more bottle. Meaning, in addition, the nira ve'ena nira, says Rashi at the end of the right side. Nira means that it's a person, he's very pleasant in his interaction with people, but it's a person that is spending more time than not in learning Torah. So there are certain times he's not a complete hermit. That's not good. Don't be removed from the people, but you don't have to go to every single fabrengen. You have to sometimes learn. I'm saying the fabrengen should be a learning fabrengen. Let me word it better. In other words, he's not a person that's always with the others. Nira ve'ena nira. Or it means he's so humble that sometimes he's not even noticed. So such a yid, Talmudim is kind of yoding. But then lav, he can have the Talmud, but it's not going to stay in his hands. That l'choyav karugas haboisim, that is shiksa, I like a bed of spices. It's the same concept that if im mesim adam atzmei ka'arugazu, we're speaking about a bed where you plant a vegetable patch. Everyone steps on you. Which means that the person is very humble. And also not only is he humble, but everyone benefits from a spice. That means that whatever you learn, you don't keep for yourself, you share with the others. These two milas, bittul and teaching. then Talmudim is Kayim. Because that gives you the schos of getting the oil of the Torah, of getting the premium of the Torah. And then you don't have shikha. The imlav in the miskayim. V'amar Rabbi Lozer, Ma'idachsiv, Parshas Kisisa. That luchais even. What's that luchais even? That im adam mesim atzmai es luchayav ke'evenzu. If a person will make his cheeks like a stone, what's that? Make a stone? Stones are solid. Stones don't get worn down. That means that if a person is teaching and teaching and teaching, it doesn't tire. If someone he has patience, he'll teach a nachamal. Then Talmudim is kind of yadayim. But if a person, I taught it already too many times, now you go figure it out on your own. Then ein Talmudim is kayim biyadai. Says the Gemara of Amar Rabbi Lozer, Ma'idachsiv regarding the luchais charus, that God's words are engraved on the luchais. He says the Gemara, they are engraved in our hearts because of the luchais. Al haluchais means because of the luchais. In which all of us were zeicha to the light in the Torah, then indeed the tragedy there was that the light was hidden, and all we got now is the holder of the Torah, are the letters of the Torah, is the chachma of the Torah. That's the chitzonius of the Torah. That is something that lav dafka you'll always retain. The Vachabar Yaakov Amar, that another meaning of charus, alalucha is charus from cherus. Cherus means kipshuti, that we were completely free. That if the first luchis would not have been broken, then the cherus that we got because of the luchis never would have left us. Ein kol umav alashin shul letzas bohem. Shenemer as it says charus, and as we know already from Pirkei Avos, al tikra charus elo cherus. Amar Rav Masna. What's the meaning of we have over there in the sheet on Parshas Chukas? Ma'idachsiv umi midbar matana. Taiches Rav Masna im mesim adam atzmai kimidbar zeh. Again, the concept of bittul shakol doshen ba. Then and only then Talmudim is kaim biyadoi. V'im lav ain't Talmudim is kaim biyadoi. Says the Gemara story. Rabbi bereid Rabbi Yosef bar Chama havalei nusel Rabbi Yosef bar Dei. Chavin and Adoram daf nun hey. We learned that there was a word called alalta that the Rava asked of Rabbi Yosef what it means. Rabbi Yosef understood that Rava already knows. There's an arichos of a sipur that Rabbi Yosef got upset at Rava. So Rabbi Yosef was upset at Rava. When it came out of Yom Kippur, and that's the time that we are to make amends, we are to offer forgiveness, to ask for forgiveness one from the other. So Amar, this is Rava in the perspective of Rabbi Yosef was not respectful to Rabbi Yosef. So Ezel Lafai said, I'm going to go and I'm going to ask him for Mechila. The Kamazik Leikos, how do you ask a person for forgiveness? Well, verbally is nice, but he did something more meaningful. When he came, Rabbi Yosef was blinded. So Rabbi Yosef had his shamish preparing for him a cup of wine. So Amalei, Rava tells the shamish, let me be meshamish, shimush Talmid Chachamim is the biggest bittul. Let me mix the wines. Then we're very concentrated as we continuously learn. I'm going to add the water. Now, Rava was actually an expert of Mizigas HaKois. So, the time when Rabbi Yosef tasted the wine, he couldn't see. But when he tasted the wine, he says, Dami Hai, Miziga. This is, I know who did this for me. This tastes like the Miziga of Rava, but Rabbi Yosef Bar Chama. Amalei, and indeed, Rava says, I know who he is. Amalei. Oh, and that was the way that was already, he asked for forgiveness and he accepted the Mechila. So he was Meshamishim. But now that they were there, so the whole story in the Dadim, it's amazing, is Rabbi Yosef, Rava asked the kasha of Rabbi Yosef. Elamar Rabbi Yosef felt slighted because Rava already knew the answer. But Rava knew. So now Rabbi Yosef is asking a kasha of Rava. So Amar Lei loy tesav akarech, and Lashon, don't even sit down. The mefarshat li hana karoi. Explain to me, what is the meaning of this, of the end of the shira in Parshas Chukas, where we say umi midbar matana, umi matana nachliel, umi nachliel bamais, umi bamas hagai. Amar Lei, Rava tells them like this: im adam mesim atzmei midbar zeh, like we just went above. Like a midbar, meaning that everyone treads on it, everyone tramples on it, means a person is very humble and honored. Then Torah nitn loy b'matana. Then the Torah, meaning the previous Torah, what's our koyach is to understand. We have to have yegiyah, but the yegiyah is only for the chitzonius in the Torah. That's within our capacity. that which is beyond understanding, that has to be given to us as a gift. And taka, you get this as a gift. And the kivin shenit loy b'matana. So then nechol loy keil, that you, the learner, becomes Hashem's inheritance, or that godliness becomes the nachla of the tzaddik. As it says, umi matana nachli el, and the kivin shenechol loy keil. So that it finds an expression of oil ligdula. As it says, umenechli el bamas. And this gedula doesn't hurt the person because he's humble, but he now becomes the channel of godliness in the world. However, if God forbid but if after becoming nachliel, it has a derogatory effect on him, and therefore he loses the level of bittul. God brings him low, and that's the next. Sometimes you go into the valley, sometimes you go into the guy. However, if he does tshuva of him chayzer boy, Hakadosh Baruch Hu magbiyah shenemar. Call gay say that even that which fell into the valley will be raised up once again. Amar Afuna, Ma'idechsiv Chayoscha Chavre Tehillim Samaches Chayoscha Yoshvuba. That the Chayoscha doesn't mean the Chayvil the Chayis, means that our animals settled there. Tachin b'Tevoscha la'ani Elohim, that you meaning you the Eibishter, you prepared for the poor. Was meint es im adam meisem atzmeke chayazu. Now the drush is taka chaya, which means shedoireses vaychelas. We're going now to review your learning. When the animal grabs the food, it rips it up and it eats it and it reaps it and it eats it. Doires vaychelas means you review it again and again and again and again and again. That's or v'ika the amri shemisareches vaychelas, that when an animal eats, a vilda chaya gets dirty. When a person learns, that's another quality. Sometimes people feel ashamed to ask because they're gonna, and that shame will prevent them from learning. They're gonna look bad. Don't be ashamed. And that goes to all the learning, that when you learn, you make mistakes. Many people are afraid to teach. They might make mistakes. Then for Hashem, just keep on learning. So then, Talmudim is kind of yodai. However, v'im lav ein Talmudim is kind of yodai. And let's go on the positive. Hashem will make him a meal, so to say, by himself. As it says, we're talking the ani, but God is going to prepare for us a su'uda. Again, this means that God will be megala, the matana, the previous atayram. Says the Gemara Vayit, Amar Rab Chia bar Avin, Amar Rab Yechon, Ma'idechsiv noitzer te'eino yoichal pirya, that the one who guards a fig will eat its fruit. And this is something we had also been to get through. So my says that there's something unique about a fig tree, that its fruits are not ready at the same time, and therefore you were harvested every day another fruchtala. Says the Gemara on top of the Amid Kol's mancha adam mashmeshba. When the Yid is constantly handling it, every time you touch the Torah, you find something else you never found before. This is like giving chizuk for people. You have to chazer. First of all, be bottle, but there's a secondary effect. Every time you review it, you'll understand something you never had before. Calls mancha adam oigebahem. Every time moitze behem tam, you'll find up another tam that you never had before. Amar Mishol barachmeni. Ma'idechsiv a pasuk in Mishlei ayeles ahavim. Ayeles ahavim means a beloved female deer. V'yalas right? That she infuses chain. Laman, this all goes to divrei Torah. Laman nimshla divrei Torah la yeles, leimelach ma yeles. Just like a yeles, racham atzar, because of her physically being with a narrow womb, and therefore v'chaviva al boy ala kol shavasham kishar shayna. So every time there is a relation, it feels like the first time. So she's chaviva al boy ala av divrei Torah. We have to reach to a place. Not I already learned it. It has to be chaviva like the first time. Chadosh and mamish. That's why, and God already made it easy. That Torah is the Yalas Chain. The Yalas Chain means Shemal Las Chain Alim Be'al. Chain is also a non-tangible. We have a lot of Hasidus about Chain. That when you connect to the Pnimius HaTorah, to that which is beyond, greater than Chachma, that is where you tap into the Chain of the Torah. And as it says weiter, that Deha Yiravuch Machales. What's meant is Lama Nimshla Divrei Kedad, to tell you that's anytime the Tino takes it, milk comes out. Av Divrei Torah calls Mancha Adam Hoigabohen. every time you'll be moitza nutram. And that's why the Torah says that be'ahavasa tishke tamid, that we are always completely, insanely in love with the words of Torah. Says the Gemara, who does that refer to? Kegoin Rabbi Lazar ben Pedas, that Amr all of al Rabbi Lazar, shoye yoshev oisik b'Torah b'shuk hatakon shel sipari. He was doing business, but he went to the market every now and then. He began to learn, and not only he got so involved in his learning that he would forget some of his stuff in the other area in the market. Why was it there? He completely forgot it. Let me see. He was insanely in love with learning Torah, and we learned that pamachas ba'adam litlay. Someone wanted to take his talis, because he was not being guarded, and a God put a sadaf to protect a snake to protect his talis. Also, Pichasidis, a sadaf is dafka soivev, right? Unlike the tzitziyos are mamale, that the greatness of Rabbi Lazar is that he connected to the pnimius HaTorah, to the light of the Torah, and that already connected him, right? You have in Chazal many times that the divrei of the Chachamim, right? U'lechishasam lechishas achrav u'lechishas saraf u'lechishasam lechishas saraf. There's a Gavaldik word of the Rebbe that why do we say that the bite of a tzaddik is like a snake? That even when the tzaddik has to give someone musar, right? The tam that a snake has of everything is like earth. He has no joy in that. Oh, right. Tana devei Ravanan. Guys, Ravanan is in Ksubas Kuvav. Ravanan was the one that recorded the whole Tana devei Elyahu. The Elyahu Rabba, the Elyahu Zuta. So he taught the following: My dechsev roichvei asoinois, those who ride donkeys, sechoirois, the white donkeys, yoshvi almidim, the ones who sit in judgment, and the hoilchei al derech sichoi, the ones who travel on the road, they speak out. Who are the ones who ride on donkeys? Roichvei asoinois, that goes on to the Chachamim. Why are they donkey riders? They're looking for a better teacher, right? As we learned a few DAF ago, that one of the reasons why a Kohen is allowed to leave Eretz Yisrael, even though Gush Eretz Ha'amim is Matama, Avir Eretz Ha'amim is Matama, is you want to find a Torah that speaks to you more. And they are tzechoiros, they are white. What does that mean? As we know, to come to learn Aliyah the Hilchaseh, to clarify the Torah, that takes a lot of Yigiyah. Those who are Yoshvin Almidin, so they go and they make an effort first to find a teacher. Then they huddle it to make the Torah white. Then they sit in judgment, meaning Shadanim Din Emes Lamitoy. They are another higher level of Yigiyah. The Holchei, the ones who are traveling means those who learn Mikra. Learning Chumash, Tzamach, Megate, we're going. When it says Al Derech, the road, refers to the learning of Mishnayos. Sichoi, speaking out, refers to the learning of the Talmud. So this is a pasuk referring to Talmud Chachamim. Shekol Sichasan is Divrei Torah. Amar Avshis Yimishum Elazar ben Azariah. My dechsev, what does it mean in Mishlei? What's meant in Mishlei? That lo yacharoich remiyot seidoi. That rachich means that you're going to roast. You're going to roast that which you caught. That one who catches something with remiyos won't be able to roast it. If you catch something with deceit, then you won't be able to enjoy it. What does that mean? Al pidrosh that lo yichyev lo yarach yomim tzayid haramoy. So like this, the trapper b'remiyah refers to someone who did not do all of the steps necessary to retain his Torah. So at a moment he has a lot of knowledge, but he's going to forget it soon. So he trapped, he chapped, but he did it b'remiyah. So this person won't be able to enjoy it. He's not going to have long days. The Torah won't stay with him for long days. Rabsheshus Omar, the opposite. Not that someone who traps deceitfully won't be able to keep it. Use deceit. Faked. Sayet or moy yachrach. Dafka, the one who traps with deceit will be the one who's catching the animals. And so what does that mean? What's the deceit that good or not good? So again, the way Rashi teaches, catching with deceit is if you're not chazening your learning. So therefore, at a moment you have a lot of knowledge, but you're not going to retain it. And the Rab Sheshes, this is one way of understanding it, as we'll see in a moment. No, keep on learning. Learn like this, learn like that. If for you it works better to learn a lot, keep on learning. Keep on learning. Keep on learning. Eventually you'll retain it. I'll give you an example of someone who learns and does not review. That you're catching birds. Now, when you catch a bird, when you go occupy yourself to catching another bird, the first bird can fly away. So what do you need to do? You need to break the wings. Or you need to cut off the feathers. So if before you went on to the second, you broke the wing of the first, that means over here you reviewed your learning. Then even when you go hop the second bird, the first bird won't fly away. But in other words, the pshat here is that they were emphasizing the need of reviewing, and we're going to see again the back and forth regarding reviewing. Says the Gemara, Omar Rabba, Omar Rava, that Omar Afschoi, Omar Afuna, that Maidich Siv, what's the meaning again of Pasuk in Mishlei, that Hoin Mehevel Yimot, that well from Hevel will be diminished. Only Kovetz Al Yod, when you gather one hand at a time, then Yarbe, then you'll get a lot. That means that you're learning without reviewing, so you're grabbing a lot. Then okay, then you're gonna come in, easy come, easy go, you smite it. But if im lav, none of us, then you're gonna be kovetz al yod, you're gonna review everything that you learned before you go on, then yarbe. And now l'choira Omar Rava, I think what Rava is saying is to parallel what we had before from Rab Sheshes, that the fact is, he says, that Yodi Rabbanan Lo Hamilsa, the Chachamim know that it's important to review. However, they don't do it. They don't do it. They learn the way we're learning. They learn negate ein daf with machadaf without reviewing it. And taka, we have a harder time retaining it, and we forget more of it. But if we keep on doing it, we keep on doing it, we keep on doing it. And that's the concept of remius, that some people, they need that motivation. They need to say that I learned whatever works, the seat, the Yetzer Hara, you go learn, and eventually it's going to be retained. That I made an effort of reviewing everything I learned before I went on, and that's why the Ikayim biyudoi. Says the Gemara Tanach Rabbanan. This is a very famous Gemara. This Gemara is brought down in Rashi in Parshas Kisiso. This is not to say that we have in Pirkei Avos, and this has to be reconciled. Right, in Pirkei Avos, it's Moshe, Yoshua, Zekanim, the Viyam, Anshe Knesset Hagdolah, and now Yeshua Bechlal is not in the picture. Ketzat Seder Mishnah means, how did Moshe Rabbeinu teach Mishnayos? We're not speaking about the Torah Shebechsav, we're speaking about the Torah Shebal Peh. And it goes like this: Moshe Lama Mipi Gvura. Says the Marsha that the Oibishter taught Moshe the Torah 4 times, even though that's not written here explicitly in the Mishnah, in the Brais. Now that he learned it 4 times, everything that was taught 4 times. Nichnas Aaron, the first one to be Mekabel from Moshe was Aaron. V'shon Eloi Moshe Pirkei. And Moshe Rabbeinu taught Aaron. When he taught Aaron, Aaron faced Moshe Rabbeinu, panim al panim. Now that Aaron heard the Torah 4 times from Moshe, or 1 time, number 1, so then Nistalik Aaron, Nistalik sometimes means he completely left. Sometimes Nistalkus means he went to the side. Nistalik Aaron, he went to the side and he sat where Dafka L'Smoil Moshe. Why did he sit to the left of Moshe? Because since now there were only 2 people, when there are 2 people, then the greater one is to the right and the other one is to the left. And now what happened? Nichnas Banov, now Aaron's children entered, and V'shano Lehen, Moshe Pirkon. Moshe Rabbeinu repeated it. It was the same thing that he taught to Aaron, he taught to Banov. So Aaron now heard it from Moshe twice, that's the 2nd time, but Banov heard it for the 1st time. Now that the children heard it once directly, panim al panim from Moshe, the Stalko Banov, the sons went to the side. But what happened? Elazar, who was the greater one, older than Isamar, sat to the right of Moshe, and Isamar sat to the left of Aaron. Aaron is already to the left of Moshe. So he was now the 2nd to the left. However, Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. And he says, no. He says, yeah, when it was only Moshe and Aaron, Moshe is to the right, Aaron is to the left. The moment Moshe has both on the right and on the left Talmidim sitting around him, so now Aaron should be to the right. That lo'olam ahara in the yamin Moshe choizer. Everyone is minded that at first, Aaron was to the left of Moshe. But now that Banav are going into the Mizrach over here, right? So Aaron stood up and Aaron sat liyamin Moshe, and Liyamin Aaron sat Elazar. And then his summer was L'Smail of Moshe. Weiter in the Bryce. So now that Aaron heard it twice, Banav heard it once, and they went to the sides, Nichnasu Zekanim. And V'shana Moshe Pirkan, again, the same portion was reviewed. Again, that's for the third time that he's teaching it. So they heard it once. Bnei Aaron heard it twice, and Aaron already heard it 3 times. Nistalku Zekanim, and they went to the Yemino Smoil. And now Nichnasu Kol Ha'am, whatever Kol Ha'am means, and V'shana Moshe Pirkan. Nimsur comes out that Biyad Aaron, directly from Moshe, he heard it 4 times. I'm sorry, he heard it all 4 times. Banav only heard it 3 times from Moshe. When Moshe taught them, when Moshe taught the Zekanim, and when Moshe taught Kol Ha'am, Biyad Zekanim Shnaim, or Biyad Kol Ha'am Echad. But now that Moshe Rabbeinu taught it for 4 times, he heard it from the Eibishter 4 times, and he repeated it 4 times. Now Moshe Rabbeinu completely left the tent, not to the side. Nostalgic Moshe left. If not, Aaron would not be comfortable teaching. V'shonalam Aaron Pirkoi. Aaron taught it. Then when Aaron taught it, now Aaron left. And Shalom Banav Pirkon. Then the children taught it. Nistalku Banav, Shalom Zekanim Pirkon. Which means that everyone heard it 4 times. The question is, who was your 4-time teacher, right? The Kol Ha'am, they heard it 4 times, but only once from Moshe, once from Aaron, once from Banav, and once from the Zekanim. Nimsa b'yad ha'kol arba. Ikan Rabbi Eliezer, that chayiv adam lishnois letalmidei arba apamim. You have to teach everything. You have to repeat each lesson 4 times. Those of us who are learning the DAF hayomi chavra, it only counts after we went through 4 cycles. The kal v'chaymer uma Aaron shalom Moshe. And who was Moshe? Moshe was the one who heard it from the Gevura. Nevertheless, it had to be taught 4 times. It's kachedin repeat hediyat alachas kama v'kama. That we have to teach it for 4 times. We have to listen 4 times. And as I learned when I was in Cheder, a gavaldik word from my Malamed, that look inside every daf in Gemara. How many lines do you have of either Rashi and Tosfos, or only Rashi, or only Tosfos on top of the Gemara? Always 4 lines. The 4 lines that they were misaded the Gemara in the print was a zecher, was a remez to Ketzad Seder Mishnah here in the Darim Daf Nun Dalet. Rabbi Akiva Omer, Minayin shechayiv adam lishnois l'tamidei achi yilamdenu. Now we're learning about 4 times. 4 times is the minimum. 4 times is if the Talmud chapped it after the 1st time or after the 4 times. But says Rabbi Akiva, and if there's a Talmud that doesn't fully get it after 4 times, you teach it as many times necessary. Shenever as it says in Vayelach, the Lamdas B'nai Yisrael, the Lamdas B'nai teach it. In other words, teach it. Not only should they remember it, should they understand it, but go back to what we learned in the last daf, to be medayik belishna. Chavra Torah shebalpeh was balpeh. They needed to be able to have the seder in their mouth. Seder also doesn't only mean the right words, but seder also means the sequence. The seder, as it says right after the words in Vayelach, sima b'fihem. It should be set in their mouths. Lahadis lipanim either means to be graceful. Lahadis lipanim means to explain it. Don't just have him review the Mishnah Malpeh as many times as he needs and says struken and cold. No, give him the tamim. As it says, Ve'elam mishpatim asher tosim lifneim. Frag the Gemara, going back to the case that say the Mishnah, if everyone has to learn it 4 times, then why didn't Moshe Rabbeinu teach it to all for 4 times? In other words, let everyone comment out once, and Moshe Rabbeinu should have repeated it 4 times. Answers the Gemara, and the kavod lizikenim. Still, frag the Gemara, the nail Aaron, the nigma mi Moshe. So if you want to give kavod, let Aaron hear it 4 times from Moshe, only himself. Then Moshe can leave and let Aaron teach it 4 times himself, right, to Banav. Aaron 4 times. Answers the Gemara that since Kivin, the Moshe he learned it from the Eibishter, so therefore Mistaye Milso. There's a special siyata d'shmaya coming back to what we're learning about when we're speaking about the chitzonius of the Torah, when we're speaking about the letters of the Torah, we're speaking about the chachma of the Torah. Yeah, then Aaron could have taught it. But you're trying to imbue, you're trying to be megale, the godliness in the Torah Moshe Rabbeinu was the one that received it directly from Hashem. So he was the one that had the greatest ability to convey not only that which is written, but that which the words contain. We learned before. All right. In other words, that once others entered the Mizrach, Aaron would stand up and he would sit to the right of Moshe. Come on, that when three people are traveling, and Harav should always be the one in the middle, and the greatest one of the Talmidim should be to his right, and only the cotton should be the smiley. Is this only following Rabbi Yehuda, not the Rabbanon? Because according to the Rabbanon, Aaron was L'Smoil Moshe the whole time, and Elazar was Liyamin. Aaron and Elazar, Aaron was greater. Says no, that this Braisa goes even according to the Rabbanon. Elama, once Aaron was already sitting down. Now, when Aaron sat down with L'Smoil Moshe, that was correct because there was no one else there. It wasn't three, it was only Moshe and Aaron. So since Aaron was already sitting down, because of the Tirch of Aaron, he remained sitting. Now let's learn this amazing story. Says the Gemara, Rapreda, Havalei, Ahu Talmida. Rapreda had a student. He only learned it after he heard it from the Rapreda 400 times. Like Rabbi Akiva says, 4 times is the minimum. And Rapreda taught it to him. Yom Echad, one day, Ba'uha lemilsa the mitzvah. There was a certain matter regarding a mitzvah that was on the horizon. In other words, that the Talmud knew that Rav Preda has to go attend the mitzvah. Rav Preda first taught him Torah. But the Talmud kept on thinking, I know, and just in a couple of moments, he's going to run out of the classroom. So he never properly paid attention. But he didn't tell the teacher, I'm not paying attention. The teacher taught it 400 times. Kanalei, all 400. But after he finished teaching that topic 400 times, the Talmud still didn't retain it. He didn't grasp it. He didn't chop it. So Amalei asked Rafredo Ha'idna Mai. So Amalei responds to the Talmud that the moment I became aware that someone told you that Ika Milsa, the mitzvah, so therefore Aschoi Levatroi, I had a Hesach Hadas. Because Kol Shata, I kept on saying that Hashta Koimar. So, Marley. So Rav Preda didn't lose his patience. He tells the Talmud, Hav daitech, you make a commitment to pay attention to me. If you make that commitment, I'm going to teach it again. Va'asni loch, I'll chazer it over for you. Not once, nacha 400 times. And when he finished giving that class, Nafka Baskol Amrali, a Baskol came out, and Rav Preda heard it. And the Hashem asked Rav Preda, do you want not to live until you're 400? To add another 400 years to however old you were destined to live? Should we add 400 years to your life? Or do you and your entire generation want to merit the Alma Da'asi? One is only for him and one is for his whole doyer. So he picked whatever was better for the doyer. Omar, he says, then he's going to hold the doyer Alma Da'asi. And this is of great Mesiras Nefesh for himself, as we learn in Chassidus, that the Iker Kavan is Dira B'Tachtoinim. We are the closest to God, Dafka, when we're living doing mitzvahs, played on mitzvah, Pirkei Yomis. Yafash Achas B'Torah, but he gave that up for his B'nai Doir. So Amar Lohen, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, interestingly, who the Lohen is to the ones who are going to administer this reward, as was to Nulai, Zu V'Zu. That he both, Sai, he's going to live another 400 years, and Sai, his whole Doir, is going to merit the Alma Da'asichem. We'll stop over here. God willing to be continued. So we still have a little bit of the sugya of to be kind of Torah, and just giving a heads up that the Gemara we're going to learn Matzeh and God's Tug is not difficult, but you have to have a picture book, because we're going to go back to the Mishnah with all of the pratim of being Ma'aber, the city, and then properly extending the 2,000 amas.
Chazak Baruch. We're learning Matzeh Yom Kippur.
We're learning we're going to learn Tuesday morning at 5 a.m.
Shkoyach.
2 hours Tuesday morning.
Marchim Teva. Good to be. Thank you.